All right, we're live.
Let's go.
Episode 3 of Trauma. Before we even start up and talk about anything, we have a new setup. Everything is looking and sounding extra
Clean.
crispy. Big shout outs to our producers, Jiwon, Ray Huang, Young Dragon. Y'all are fucking killing it.
Young Dragon.
And yeah, if any of you guys are looking for executive producers out there, stay the hell away from ours. We're locking ours down.
Check.
The other thing I wanted to get into, Sam, is it was a special day yesterday, no?
It might have been.
It might have been, right?
To some it's special.
Dude.
To some it's even more special.
I wish you told the team beforehand, but it was your birthday.
It was my birthday.
Happy birthday, Sam.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
What's the magic number?
It's a solid 36.
Solid 36. But a young 36.
I feel it.
A young 36. Okay.
Vibrant, fruitful.
Cool. And you said like families in town and everything, and
families in town.
Yeah.
Celebrated my birthday with my brother.
Awesome.
We haven't celebrated my birthday in 20-some years.
That's
nice.
Nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
How does 36 feel?
Feels good. I mean, new opportunities, new season.
Yeah.
You know, get a chance with walking with different people. So it's a good time. Mm-hmm. I'm ready to go.
Cool.
36.
Here we go.
Thank you.
I didn't know you were only 6 years older than me, or 7, 6, 7, whatever.
Cheers.
Yeah. All right. Well, today, so last week we talked about just the plastic pedestal and how pastors are human at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Today we're gonna get into a meaty topic, which is just identity and fulfillment.
Yeah.
And
big topic,
right? So we're just gonna kind of roll it, see how long it takes, and see where we go with it. But I think more so than the other topics, like the more I thought about it this week, this specific topic in relation to our experience, for me at least, it's I can't separate my church experience from my AAPI experience in life, right? They're just kind of intertwined.
What's AAPI?
So Asian American Pacific Islander.
There it is. Yep.
Thank you for that. And as I was trying to think through like what are some big milestones? How do I want to label the chapters of my life? It was just really inseparable. Like they're just so intertwined with one another, and so I think that's going to be a common theme. I know, as you've shared with me, your story, it's kind of the same deal there. So as always, let's just kind of start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the early days here. Feel free to guide me as you will, Sam.
Cool.
And just in line with last week as well, I was telling you this off air. Like you're a pastor, and I feel like most pastors I know, it's like a life mission thing, right? It's like. It's not like I'll dabble and I'll dip. It's kind of like this is my life calling. And so I would love for you to share what your experience has been like trying to find identity outside of that.
For sure.
So,
and I also think it's important for you to kind of share like your experience with church is your experience. You know what I mean? Some people have had great experiences with the church. Some people have not. And I think you being able to share your experience is helping those who have had like-minded, experience that I think is important. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you. It's okay. I like that. Before we even get into that, then, I think it's worth calling out, like, just for everyone that's tuning in, as we talk about the experience of trauma and all this kind of stuff, it's not a monolith, right? I feel like that's actually one of the big myths of Christianity is the idea and goal is that, there's one Bible, one gospel, which is true. But as I'm talking and sharing about my experiences, it's just mine, right? Yeah. There are people out there that have had excellent experiences with their churches and their communities.
Good for them,
Right, and that's awesome. But in the similar way that church experience isn't a monolith, or church is not a monolith, even like cultural identity is not a monolith either, right? What does it mean to be white, black, Asian? There's no one way to do it. And so I just want to call that out to be like, everyone's got their own voice, their own story, and so this is just ours.
Yeah, own journey. Yep.
So let's rewind the clock back, and I'm thinking when I'm in elementary school. It's interesting because I think in episode 1 I talked about how I never knew life without the church. And so when I think back to even elementary school and as I'm getting more social, in a lot of indirect ways, I feel like being Asian was kind of discouraged. Right? So it's kind of like, I would hear the phrase, but you're Asian, and in not the best contexts.
Oh, interesting. I've never heard that.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's like, I get good grades. Oh, it's because you're Asian.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah. I got cut from basketball tryouts. Well, dude, it's because you're Asian. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I don't think any of my friends were raised in a racist way where they were aware of what they were doing. But in a lot of ways, I would hear shit that was it was cutting my legs from underneath me without me realizing.
Interesting.
So I remember homies would come over to my house. Oh, it smells different, right? Just different food. And then I'll never forget, it was the first time I saw this big ass jar of kimchi, right? Number one vegetable out there in the world, or side dish rather. And I remember dude was like, dude, it looks like somebody's head got blended up in a blender. Like, what the fuck is that?
Right.
And at the time I'm like, haha, funny.
Right.
But then like, I'm like, okay, now that I'm older, I'm like, damn, that reinforced some non-positive language around the seminal dish of my people, you know?
Right.
And so as I just think about me and growing up in school and figuring out who I am, it was a lot of being reminded of what not to be versus what to be. So just being Asian wasn't cool. And I'm embarrassed and ashamed, but like, this is my truth. As I think back to my time back then, I tried really hard to break out of the Asian bubble. Like what I mean by that is like the image of being Asian. I wanted to hang out with the popular white kids. I wanted to hang out with the jocks, like those losers that are circling up over there and, you know, playing with their Yu-Gi-Oh cards and talking about Jesus. Like, I'm not one of those guys, you know?
Bless him if you are, though. Bless you if you are.
But similar for you, like, what was it like growing up Asian when you were growing up?
Yeah, man. I mean, a couple of years older, but Asians stuck with Asians. That's it. You know what I mean? You didn't really fit in with the white crowd or the black crowd or the Hispanic crowd. You tried to figure out who your people were. And so I think a lot of that was like trying to figure out what mold you were, what type of Asian you were. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what was cool back then is you rocked the Jinko jeans, the Kangol hat. You know, you looked a little bit more hood, looked a little bit more what maybe some people would call black.
Yeah.
You know, more so than like the fitted high water jeans that were just not cool back then. I mean, all of a sudden it's cool today, but back then it wasn't good. It wasn't cool, you know? And so you were either a white Asian or a black Asian, and you had to, you know, figure that out, you know?
And that's funny you say that. I was the exact opposite. I was that fool, God, so cringe. I was that guy rocking, so Abercrombie and Fitch used to be the shit, right? And I know, hey, I need you to accept me as I am.
I can't accept that. That's nasty.
I'll never forget this. It's like, all right, I had a brown polo, and those polos are like fucking $80. Right? They're not cheap. Brown polo, the moose was green. And just to make sure, I wanted people to know how saucy I was, I would wear a fucking green polo underneath the brown polo to accent it. Both collars popped.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll get accepted now, right? It's like... I'm gonna wear my Sperry shoes, and I'm gonna, you know what I'm saying? And so I went the kind of opposite way because I actually grew up in like low income apartments where it was being accepted was like being like ghetto. And then I hit school and I'm like, oh, those are the have-nots. I need to then transfer who I am and my image to this over here. And so, so similarities in that way, right? Where, like you said, there is. We didn't have like a Jay-Z, right? We didn't have a Michael Jordan to look up to. You know, now we have we have the Eddie Wongs of the world and the Jack Ma's of the world or whatever. But yeah. So within school, there's that. But then I think within church, in a similar way, it was a lot of reminders again of what not to be. Right. So it's like deep down, I wanted to be desired by all the girls around me. I wanted to get filthy fucking rich. I wanted to be successful, popular, but it was just a lot of reinforcing of like, that's not the way to do it. Don't be like that. Don't desire those things. And so what ended up happening for me is echo chamber of what not to be. I never really found, or I never really had a sense of like my authentic self, because I always had a picture in my mind of like, I know what's going to be accepted, either at home, academically, religiously, or at school. But who the fuck is Daniel? Right. And so it was hard.
And it's going to be fun, kind of unpacking what you mean by authentic self. But I think part of the narrative that a lot of us grew up in is we were told what things not to do, who you don't want to become. And so there wasn't much space in trying to figure out, like, you know, we have the term like your identity is in Christ. We have that lingo. But a lot of us, if you unpack it, we don't even know what that really means. And so there is this confusion as to then, do I have to just look like my leader? Do I have to look like a certain part, you know, very polished? You look a certain way, present yourself in a certain way. You know, in the Korean church, you have your suit and tie, buckled in, like very polite, very respectful. Like, is that what it means to be a son or daughter in Christ? And I think there's some tension I think that you've been feeling is like,
for sure.
Well, like, who is Daniel if I'm uniquely made? Who is Daniel in the midst of the community at large? Does that make sense? Or am I supposed to just be like everybody else, talk like everybody else, and then that means I fit in?
Definitely the latter. And so, yeah, when I say my authentic self, it's like I straight up just didn't know. It's gonna sound weird, but it's like I didn't even know what I liked. It's like my mom laid out the model minority path of like, get good grades, go to a college, do this. And as you grow older, and at church, you have a list of things you need to hit, and you start checking all these boxes.
Yeah.
And then I got to a point where I was like 26, and I was like, I don't even know who the fuck I am.
Yeah.
It's like, I realized as I got more honest with myself, I know that there's this idea of, there's a perception of how Daniel Choi is that other people think, right?
Absolutely.
There's a perception of how I perceive myself.
Yeah.
But as I got more honest with myself, I realized like, damn, maybe who I actually am is neither of those people. And if that's the case, who the fuck am I?
Absolutely. That's the confusion is at the same time, you want people to see you a certain way.
Yeah.
And so you project that as best as you possibly can.
Right.
But in that, there's that tug of like, wait a minute, is that really who I am?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And why do I want people to think of me this way?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I love that part because that's the part where you're going to realize you're the most lost you could ever be when you live your life according to what people think about you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so one of my favorite things that I love to share, I can't remember where I got it from, is if you live by people's praises, or if you live by people's encouragements, you will die by their discouragements.
Right.
Meaning, if all you live for is people's praises and they're encouraging you, loving on you, the moment they say, oh, I don't like this about you, the moment they don't hit you up as often or don't wish you a happy birthday.
Right.
All that stuff. Like, all of a sudden, it turns your world upside down.
I just got that.
You know what I'm saying?
My bad, Sam. I love you so much.
It turns your world upside down.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And, no, that's a great point. Because also, it's like, as you say this, I'm thinking about the fact that, like, as an Asian, and even in church, especially in an Asian church, there's this inherent sense of collectivism that is pushed, right? You move out west to America, it's all about individualism.
Right,
but in the Asian family, right, it's about the family unit.
Community,
it's not just about... I used to get my ass beat for saying it's my life. It's my future, right? But then I think about my church experience, it's kind of the same deal. There was no encouragement to, what do you like? What do you want to do? Here's a picture of how you should behave and what you should do. You should serve church on Sunday and go to retreats. But there was no encouragement for like, well, just do it, like, find out who you are. And so I ended up getting like bitter because, again, I said I was like 26. I still remember this moment. I was in the car. I was talking to my mom on the phone, and I broke down crying because I don't even know what the fuck happened. I just got overwhelmed with this sense of pointlessness. Like I was just caught up in like I was getting a paycheck, I guess, and I didn't know what I was living for. I felt isolated as hell.
Just living life.
I felt like church and Christianity failed me. Because let's be real, like whether it was direct or indirect, I felt like I was given the promise of if you follow God and you go to church, you will find your identity, you will find your purpose and your fulfillment. It was on some shit like stay the course and you will eventually turn into Charizard from Charmander type of shit. It's like just stay the course, do the right things, and you'll evolve. And then fast forward when I'm 26, like none of that shit panned out. And I just remember being so lost. I just, again, I didn't even know what I wanted to do with my life, and that disturbed me. I was like, what the fuck? I have a college degree. I'm making money. I feel like this is a point in time where everything should kind of be coming together, making me feel better about myself. But I was just like, in the deepest pits of the night or whatever, like I just knew I didn't have that shit figured out. And to be fair, I don't think you ever fully figure it out. But that was the first time in my life where I was authentic in saying, I'm fucking lost right now.
That's
and I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing with my life.
That to me is like the beautiful part about life and journeying, as people of God, etc., is when you can be honestly honest with the idea that I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I don't know who I am or where I'm going, and I'm just lost. That to me is like the point of grace where we can finally say, at the most lost I can be is where I'm going to really need to search and find a true faith, a true lifestyle, a true identity that is for real and not just something that I was told to believe so many years ago. Does that make sense?
No, totally.
Like that to me is what I think is authentic and real because now faith and life become personal to you and not just something that you were taught in Sunday school.
Right. Speaking of Sunday school, it was interesting. So that moment happened. And I kind of made a deal with God because this was like right after my hiatus actually, which I keep referring to like it's over. It's not. I'm still figuring shit out.
That's good.
But I remember I left the church. I hit this rock bottom spot, and it was actually the first time. Shout outs to Mama Choi, because usually she's like coddling me, like suffocating me. She told me this is good.
Yeah.
She was like,
that's good.
shit, dude, like, hey, buckle in, because
Yeah.
life's about to get interesting now.
Yeah, that's good.
And so I remember making a deal with God. I was like, dude, I'm out of the church. I found like for the first time I've gotten connected to my inner voice and how I truly feel. I'm going to go on this journey and figure out who I am.
Yeah.
But I promised to you that I'll be honest to God. I'm going to be honest to myself the whole way through. And if you're real, if the Bible is true and you are who you say you are, I know I'm going to come back to you, because I'm going to be very honest with myself about if I'm happy, fulfilled, at peace, all this kind of stuff, right? And so I left the church, and funny enough, in this age of Instagram and influencers, all these fucking CEOs and business people are what caught my ear, because from a content perspective, I'm talking about the Gary V's of the world. I'm talking about OG Tony Robbins of the world. And it's just kind of like, I was hearing messaging from them that resonated deeper. It was more encouraging than any shit any pastor's ever told me. So that kind of fucked me up, where I was like, success and business people are demonized, yet they're spitting some fucking truth that I can't deny.
Right.
And they would encourage things like authenticity. Stop lying to yourself. Stop trying to be.
Yeah.
You ought to. You should. Fuck all that. Just be. And the more you be who you are, like you're gonna eventually evolve into who you're meant to be. Right. And what was interesting is, this is all what's the word when it's not religious?
When it's not religious?
Yeah, like when you listen to like music, secular. It was all secular like messaging, right? But at the same time, like my Christian roots, it would kind of light up when I would hear things and I would connect things to the Bible. So for example, I remember Gary Vee talking about like you need to shed this idea of who you should be, who you ought to be, and you need to just be who you are. That sounded a lot like in the Bible. It says something like those, like to find yourself, you have to lose yourself. Right? And I was just kind of like, that sounds similar. There was a lot of language around the best leaders and the most successful people, they serve.
Yeah.
In the Bible, doesn't it say to be first, you need to be last?
There's some overlap in values and principles,
and
for sure.
so it was kind of like that kind of validated some of the things I was hearing. But again, it was just weird to me that I was able to learn real life shit that helped me grow outside of the church.
Yeah. I think that is powerful, because if we just have the conception that we can only find God within the church, that's hazardous.
Right.
That's completely unbiblical, right? If God is omnipresent, God is everywhere in the midst of our everyday life, then we can see the fingerprints of God everywhere. In our workplaces, in our families, in our sports, or whatever. We should be able to experience and see God outside of church walls, which is what the hope was for, right? We see God in the community inside the walls, but we also see the tangible presence of God active in the world in which He created. And so that to me is like you're seeing God outside of the parameters that were safe for you at once, and saying, look, I just need to open my eyes to other things that help me to see maybe different perspectives, different characteristics of God that I've never seen before.
Yeah. No. You hit it on the head. And it's like, I guess that's one thing I still like am having a hard time getting past, which is my entire church experience, everything was so fixated within that bubble.
Yeah.
Like all the drama, all the conversation, even me finding my identity through roles at the church, it was all within the four walls of that church. Right. But like when I'm on that hiatus and I'm just exploring myself, I'm like, damn, life's happening out there. Right. Like this is not reality here. Yeah, we're showing up every Sunday and we're talking about shit that's supposedly very meaningful and life changing, but like real life's happening out there. So I'm gonna go out there real quick and see what I can find out. Right. And I'll be back. That kind of thing.
Yeah. There's definitely I think as I've gotten to see different churches and talk to other people who have trying to find a church home. Yeah. It's super hard for people to find a community because the church that they visit or the community that they, are looking at, on Sunday to Sunday, they're very exclusive.
Yes.
They're not as welcoming. No. And if they are, it's for a moment and then you gotta somehow earn your stripe to get in, and it's hard for people to feel like I matter and I'm part at the dinner table. Like I belong here.
That's facts.
And that's hard for people. That's why people enjoy online service. You don't got to deal with none of that.
That's real.
You know,
That's
you turn
real.
it on.
Yeah,
I'm uncomfortable.
yeah.
I'm going to turn it off. You know?
That's real. You know what? That was a flag that all my friends that visited my church at the time told me. It's like, yeah, like, it seems great. Everyone's close there, but like, I didn't feel very welcome.
Yeah.
It's so true, and it's like, for me, I think because I was drinking and distributing Kool-Aid, I was like, oh well, just keep at it, and one day you'll get accepted. That kind of thing.
Right.
That's so ass backwards, right, from what church ought to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that culture, just that bubble culture, was just not very good for me.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, another parallel draw is I feel like a lot of people get shit for like. Or I was raised to think like, don't look for your identity in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your job doesn't define you, your title doesn't define you.
Uh-huh.
But my church experience, my title within the church did define me.
Uh-oh.
Right? You join a church, you become just a member of the body, right?
Yeah.
And then you start to serve the church, and then you're a worship pastor, you're a small group leader, and all of a sudden, you start to feel better about yourself based on these titles, which is the same shit as like at work, right? Oh, I hit manager now I'm somebody. Now I'm worth something.
Real deal.
And it's just another fucking cringy story. God, I used to hate who I was. I remember I hit this title like deacon at my church, right? Which is biblical. There's like biblical backing and all that.
It's
but
an
like,
honor, yeah.
It's an honor, right? I felt like the shit. I felt like, yo, Charizard is here type of shit. Like, okay.
Maybe Charmeleon. I don't know about Charizard.
Yeah, sure. Oh, I love that you even know that. But no, so I felt like I hit a level. And all of a sudden, I'm fucking like acting like I'm like just pissing out excellence every morning and just like casting judgment, but under the hat of like, no, but this is for the greater good of God.
Yeah.
I remember to this day, I was dating a girl at the time, and it was my best friend's 21st birthday. We're going to Vegas, right? But I was a deacon, so I was like, okay, I need to figure out a way where I can be there for my boy. We're gonna have fun, but I need to obey every single law of the Bible. Why? Because I'm a fucking deacon now, dude. This ain't the minor leagues anymore, Daniel. Like, God is, you're on a fucking pedestal. Higher standard, all that type of shit.
Right.
And so, I don't know, I was like 21, 22. Girlfriend was under 21 at the time. And my dumbass, for some reason, thought, okay, well, God's probably going to be pleased if we go on this trip, but I don't let her drink. Like, yeah, let's go to Vegas together and you can't have fun, but you're going to watch me drink. But I was so fucking deluded at the time to thinking that was the right way to live because I'm a deacon now. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just, I was just so out of touch with myself in reality that, like, I think back and I shudder and I'm like, oh my God, I was in that sunken place. I was like in this, it was just crazy.
Yeah.
So
it's not so, I think it's important to be able to distinguish. It's not so much you operating or living out of like, I want to honor the Lord. I want to honor, you know, who I am in Christ, but it's more about I'm a deacon, so I have to uphold this position.
Right.
So that's why I'm not gonna allow her to drink.
Sure.
And I think that's like clear thing because, I mean, you got to have some standards of morality in the sense of like, yeah, I'm just not gonna give alcohol to underage people whenever freely nilly, right? But I think there is something that goes along the side of like, if I'm only doing things because I have a position,
right?
What happens when you don't have that position?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Then we would say that's when you typically would act a fool or da-da-da-da. So really, that wasn't really you in the first place.
And that's the whole point. Dude, my friends would look at me like I was a psycho. Like, I remember checking into the hotel, and they didn't even know these ground rules were laid down. And then she said it like, oh yeah, I can't drink. What do you mean you can't drink? We're here for my birthday. Like, dude, we're just checked into the Venetian. We're about to go out. Yeah, Daniel and I had a talk, and he's a deacon now, so I can't be drinking. And they looked at me like I was a fucking psycho. They're like, what?
Yeah.
And this kind of goes back to I completely lost my train of thought there. But it goes back to casting judgment and following these rules that I didn't truly understand or agree with for the sake of doing it.
For the sake of the position.
And that sounds like Pharisees in the fucking Bible that are going out there and just pointing out rules and people that are breaking them. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's for me personally, I think I've been to a place where, I'll put it this way. The season that I am in now, I am understanding more so what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be Sam, like the son of Christ, like the son of God. Like, I'm learning all these things outside of my pastoral position. Because if I'm honest, a lot of times you may get caught up in what you do. And what you do defines who you are. That's completely backwards. Completely backwards. It's like I'm only pastoral when I have the position, but when I don't have the position, next thing I know, I'm just gonna do whatever it is that I feel like I want to do. It's counter from what I used to do, loving people, serving others. When you no longer have that position, then you become lost and confused, and that's where I was at.
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to, treat people? And I become very inward focused and selfish. I'm like, I don't want to do anything with anybody else. But the moment I get the title back, then it's all of a sudden game on.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
So are you saying you almost felt like you had a hall pass when you weren't a pastor versus like when you were a pastor, to be a little bit more human and a little bit more in tune with yourself?
I wouldn't say that. It's not about being more human. I think the job position defined what I did and who I was. Does that make sense?
Got you. So it wasn't so much let me figure out who Sam Townsend is. It was more like, this is who Pastor Sam needs to be.
That's exactly what you think.
Got it.
And whether pastors and leaders want to admit it or not, that's always in the back of your head. It's always in the back of your mind of like, what are people going to think? How are people going to respond? You know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, there is a level of, you need to honor the platform that the Lord has given you. Or, whether you're in the business world or in the church world, you have to honor the position that you have. I get that. But oftentimes we let that be our identity.
Right.
And that's the fault. That's the place where you crumble. Right?
Okay, actually, before... This is something I wanted to ask you last episode, but speaking of shit that sits on the back of every pastor's mind, whether they want to admit it or not, do you guys keep track of body counts? And by body count, let me be clear.
Yeah.
Souls you have saved from the pits of hell. Be honest.
Souls I have saved.
Just like, come on, you're a pastor, you're at a church.
Yeah.
If I'm a pastor and I'm leading a big ass church and I lead a retreat and they're like, altar call, 50 people come up, I'm in the bank account, 50 more. Like, boom, body count, let's go. Do you guys keep track of that shit?
I'm sure some do.
But you don't?
I've never kept count. Like, I've kept count of like who's if like you've been a faithful attendee for a couple years and then all of a sudden you stop coming out, and then I'm like, I wonder what happened. I keep track of that. I keep track of like, man, I haven't seen this person in a while, or I wonder how this person's doing. But I don't have a tally of like how many people I put in the books of salvation.
That's how you know Sam's a real one, because he doesn't keep count of who he saves. He keeps count of those he lost.
Oh, dang.
Ooh-hoo.
Oh, dang. Don't toot my own horn.
Wait,
it's my birthday weekend, but I don't know.
That's not some heroic shit. I feel like I saw that in a movie once. But anyways, okay, so going back to identity, it's like one thing you and I talked about that really fucked me up in a good way is the false big three. So I remember you saying, it was a book we were reading or something, but it said something along the lines of, everybody in this world will base their identity on one of these three things, if not more. What you do, i.e. your career or whatever, what you have, possessions, money, house, and third is what people think of you, right? So perception. And I remember you asking the question of like, what if our identity was not tied to any of those three? What if it was based on something so unshakable and so firm that no one can take or give that from you because that's just who you are? And that fucked me up, because I was like, it was just new data that I'd never considered before. But then also, to your point, back to like Christian talk, I remember like the topic of identity is talked about a lot in church, but like the answers are so fucking... Well, your identity, Daniel, is you're a son of Christ, first and foremost. Like, okay, but what the fuck does that mean? Like, I gotta make money out here. I'm looking for a wife out here. Like, what does that mean? And they would just look at me like, oh, you don't get it. No, you're a son of Christ before anything.
And they say it even louder, like, no, you're a son.
Right. And I'm like, okay. I still don't fucking get it, but I don't want you to judge me, so okay, I get it.
Right. So, as the volume gets higher,
So, like, I don't know. Like, I think identity is something that you don't find. Like, I think it's something you work on forever in your life. But that notion of like not basing it on one of those three things, like that's when I really started, like when I say authenticity and I found my voice, the more I started to think along those lines of like just stop trying to be and just be. That's when I started to feel a little bit better about
discovery.
myself. Right.
And part of identity that is going to be important to kind of define is when we ask like who am I, it's a loaded question, but the question is really trying to ask what gives me significance, what gives me value, where do I belong? You know what I mean? So when we ask these questions, it's because in one way, shape, or form, you don't know what gives you value. So you find it in your career, what you do. For me, it was a pastor. The more I served, the more I felt like I mattered. You know?
That's so true. I mean, okay, even like the business world. Like, okay, people that have good jobs, good for them. Like, that's a part of life. But I just remember, like, I have homies that were like in that place of like self-discovery, which I'm still in. I'll be like, yo, are you guys happy? They'll be, oh yeah, of course I'm happy, Daniel. Like, and I'm like, well, okay, you work at Amazon, for example. Like, life's good. You're making good money. It's got good cachet. The brand is strong.
Right.
But like, I couldn't help but ask myself, like, okay, what if Amazon fell off the face of the earth or the face of the earth, or they didn't have that job? Would they still say that they're happy?
Okay.
And it's like
you're trying to peel that onion
a little bit, and to forget job of like, okay, what's your identity? I'm a husband. What if your wife died? I'm a son. What if your parents, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Then who are you underneath all that shit?
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think it's necessarily about getting to a point where you can fend off every answer and like field every question. But like, I don't know, just going back to the bullshit meter idea, it's like, I sniffed, I got a whiff of bullshit every time I would like talk to people about that stuff, whether they're in the church or not.
Like, if we were, two things that come to mind. One, the reasons why it's hard for us to find our identity in church sometimes, it's because when you don't feel like you belong, you're lost. So the church becomes a place where I don't want to go. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So like we talked about earlier why like church cliques and all that other stuff is like hazardous to people. Why people don't want to go is because they don't feel like a sense of community. Why that matters in our identity is because you don't feel like you have a place to belong. So
a tribe.
If you don't have a tribe, like what then? Like, what's the point? You know, why go to a place where that you feel like an outcast?
Right.
So you don't.
Right.
So particularly for those who have been hurt by the church, hurt by church people, pastors and leaders, that's going to be the last place you go to because no one wants to feel like you don't matter. No one wants to feel like you're the back of the bus that's forgotten. And so your identity gets shaken up because you don't have a place of belonging.
You know what's funny about that? I don't know what it is. I'm not saying I'm proud of this or not, but like, why are Koreans so fucking good at that like clan mentality of like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, I don't know, like Korean churches to me are just, we're just built different where for right or wrong, good or bad, it's like we have this little Korean bubble that no one can penetrate. But then also, you always have that one white dude or that one Chinese dude that's like, or Indian, whatever, right? And then they get accepted into the clan. But like, I feel like other churches aren't like that. Like,
unfortunately, I mean,
why are Koreans like that?
I mean, I don't want to place judgment, but it is an observation of like very much like that. If you're Korean, you're Korean.
Is it it's gonna be like a national pride thing or like what the fuck? Like,
man, if I'm just gonna be honest, I think there's a lot of arrogance and pride where we just want church to look a certain way, and we want it to look like what we look like. You know what I mean? And so that's why if you have a certain type of person come to church, and you know that type of person, what they look like, how they dress, what they talk like, more than likely they'll be sitting in the back of the church.
Right.
No one will say anything to them.
That's true.
They're gone, right?
That's true.
But if you have someone else that comes into the doors, right? Looks like a Daniel Choi or a Delina, for example. When they come to the church door, everybody's flocking at them. Hello, how you doing? We welcome you. We love you. Blah, 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 blah. But if you don't fit the mold, and the Koreans are notorious for this, if you don't fit the mold, you're just not going to belong.
Yeah. Okay, not to just shit on Koreans because I love being Korean, but like also the church was always like, it's supposed to be a hospital where like sick people go, but everyone's fucking like flexing their Gucci shit and like trying to like look the piece and like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it just seems so ass backwards.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a couple pieces, but you know, it's not like it's my birthday weekend or nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But and the other thing that's really, really great when I talk about identity is, you know, I love my family. I love, you know, the culture that we were brought up in. But I grew up in a household where my mom, God bless her, would tell me the only reason why I'm alive is because of you. You're the only reason I'm living. You are the reason I'm living for. When I grind, when I work, when I do this, when I do that, it's for you, Samuel. It's for you and your brother. And I'm like, I'm 36. I'm a grown ass man. Like, I don't need you living for me. I'm gonna live my life. Like, I'm gonna love you and honor you. But her entire identity became centered around that. And so when I got married, that for her, and my brother, who was younger than me, got married. It was like, what does my mom do? How do I live? She's not a wife anymore because my parents are divorced. So she's like, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I belong. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life. And that to me that's where a lot of people are at, is when you base your sense of value and significance around those three things that we talked about earlier. You're gonna notice when one domino falls, it all falls, and you're just like, I have no idea.
Right. Okay, so then let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Like, What do you think is the answer? Because identity is, again, I think it's one of those things, you cannot be taught identity. I think you got to go learn that shit on your own. So like, what is your take now, given all the mistakes and successes that you've had? Like when someone says, well, I don't know what my identity is, like, what's your tip?
I think we hear it in the church so often that it becomes very stale. It becomes like, oh, I've heard this before, but I'm learning more and more what it means to be loved, right? Not by what I do or what I say or what I have, but what does it mean for Sam to be truly loved, like God's beloved son? And I'm learning that more and more. There's a great book, if you're on that journey, called Life of the Beloved by Henry Nouwen. It's a must read for those who are wondering, okay, if what I do doesn't give me value and significance, if what people say and what I have shouldn't give me significance or value, not that these things are bad, but there's something more to it, and you're on a faith journey, then I think understanding what it means to be so loved in spite of everything that you've done or don't have, or how you view yourself, there's something core in that of being loved, knowing you are loved. And that does something to the individual.
Wait, so okay, my Asian genetics and my just overall type A personality.
Yeah, hit it.
So I'm here, my question being, what do we do to find identity? And it sounds like you're saying, stop thinking about what you should do and you just need to be. No? Did I miss it?
Yeah. And to a degree. I think you're learning how to be on the basis of you were created by a creator.
Okay.
So understanding that relationship to me is what allows us to be fully who we are. Does that make sense?
It does. But when you say, okay.
It's a lot of Christian jargon, I get it. So I'm trying to simplify it.
Yeah. So okay, let's translate that then. So if we say you're trying to if somebody is at home right now and I make six figures, I feel good about where my life is headed, I'm in a good relationship, but they don't know who the fuck they really are.
Yeah.
Like what do you think is step one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think part of that first step is realizing there's got to be more to life and me that I've never known before. Like we all feel that, like almost that sense of emptiness, that sense of like question mark, that sense of like I don't know. That's the point of. That's the initial contact. That's the point.
That reminds me of a quote that I heard from this guy named Naval, who's on Joe Rogan Experience. He said, I don't even think this was his quote, but he said, everybody has two lives, and the second one begins when you realize you only have one. And I think what that kind of makes me think of is, I feel like for myself, I live my whole life a certain way without really questioning it. That it wasn't up until I really considered, what if everything I fucking know is completely false? Kind of like what you're saying.
It could be.
And then you start your journey of like, okay, let me relearn and unlearn some shit along the way.
Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at, kind of?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a dangerous road for some people, but to me, that allows people to genuinely say, this is what I really believe in. This is who I concretely can say, this is who I am. That's why for me, as I rip off the Band-Aid and kind of, I've been through some church hurt, I've been through some wounds, I've been through some struggles in life, when I can strip it all away and say, okay, what am I really living for? Who is Sam at the core of it all? And you start really searching, then you start to find. And I think that's the part where a lot of people get uncomfortable with. But that's the place where I have slowly started to say, this is the most confident I have been in who I believe God has made me to be. And who God really is. And how I want to live my life moving forward. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
And so I think that's part of the journey. It's, and I'm hesitant to say this is what you should do, or this is what you should believe in per se. But I think when you start to question, and say there's got to be more to this.
Right.
There's something wrong here, and I'm not. I just can't grab the handlebars just yet. I think that's a great start to say I got to start asking some questions.
I like that, and maybe that's what we get into the next episode, because. That's another Christianese thing I would hear all the time. It's like, well, when the topic of identity and purpose call, well, you need to find God's calling for your life, dude. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean, dude? Is there a website I can go onto? Like, is there an Instagram handle I can follow? Like, because it's not like I would pray to God and be like, all right, God, like, break it down for me. What do you want me to do? And he doesn't zap you with like an epiphany. I mean, he might to some people, but it wasn't for me. And so next episode, maybe we can get into that, because, again, I think as I was trying to look for identity and still am in one of those three things that we talked about, I'm not like, I feel like that's almost a part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
It's a part of like you have to like make mistakes to figure out what works and
filter
doesn't.
it out.
So yeah, I guess to summarize what we talked about today, then again, I want to reiterate the whole monolith idea because it's like my experience, your experience is not everybody's experience.
Yeah.
Whether it be across church culture or ethnic culture or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But my biggest aha moment, and I'm still in this journey, like in the thick of it, was being honest with myself, authentic with the fact that I don't know what the fuck I'm doing with my life, where I'm going to be in 10 years. Like who is Daniel supposed to be?
Right.
The second I really embraced that reality, and the second I really started being honest about things I wanted, whether they're good or bad, and I started to really allow myself to get in touch with myself, is when I started to, like you said, feel better about myself, feel more confident about the things I believed in. And it sounds like you had a similar kind of path.
Yeah. I without sounding overly Christian, but I think it is a truth that I've held on to and realized is knowing that even in our journey of uncertainty, in our hurt, in our struggle, in our pain, is realizing and knowing that God is as much present with you now than maybe when you felt like you were the quote unquote perfect churchgoer before.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like understanding the presence of God, the love of God in our lives, where even when we feel like we've the most distant or the most broken or the most whatever, his presence to me so speaks volumes more so than what do I got to do? What do I got to figure out? How do I, act differently or da-da-da-da? Like that'll come in time, but it's more so understanding, man, like what am I really living for? Like at the core of Sam, like who is he? What really gives me significance and value, And I think for you, when you've climbed the ladder, you're successful at a younger age, and you're making the dollars and you look great and you have a great relationship or whatever. You're starting to realize like, okay, I have all these achievements and I have all these things, but there's this tension in me that just something's like
no, that's so real. And like, okay, I'll wrap up with this because like even one of our fucking EPs here, Ray, like we're young adults, we're talking about life, and I don't know, I guess the more we were honest with each other about like what we didn't know what was going on, again, is when we started to, I feel like, really start to learn things that held water, right? That was like substantial.
Right.
And so for everyone out there listening to, I encourage you, like if you think you're happy, that's fucking awesome. I envy you. But also like check yourself and ask yourself if you're being honest, because if you were stripped of your job, your reputation or whatever, like who are you underneath all that? And like it's, again, I think this is an ongoing thing that doesn't really have a end place.
And I'm excited to get into like how our cultural and ethnic background matters, more into how maybe the church has shaped our identity more so than it should have, instead of maybe our faith. These are all things that matter. And so as I struggle, man, I think we're going to find some really awesome things.
God, it's so refreshing that you're Pastor Sam and you're being fucking human. Like everything was so plastic prior to this, so I love it. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back next week.
Peace.
All right.